more, but let's just revisit that theme about the Model Shop and Establishment Act, which allows restaurants and shops to be open 24/7 because we love eating out and shopping out. So a stock on our radar right now is TeamLease Services. Now that stock closed up 10% yesterday because as we know, the company is 100% into HR recruitment. So with this Model Shop and Establishment Act, it could create additional employment and therefore more work and business for TeamLease itself. Manish Sabharwal of TeamLease Services joins us now. In fact, after the 10% up move yesterday, it's up another 3% today. Manish, hi, good morning. You know, ours is a very simplistic way of looking at it, but you tell us, with this Model Shop and Establishment Act and perhaps more employment coming through, what could it mean for your business?
No, I think the overall theme of lower regulatory cholesterol for job creation has been on for the last sort of few years. So clearly the Factories Act, which is hostile to job creation and which is why only 11% of India works in manufacturing. But this Model Shops and Establishment Act really sort of does labor reform in a way that hasn't been tried before. Of course, states have to adopt it, but I think, you know, India's job creation story will be different from China's. Manufacturing is we don't have the same global manufacturing opportunities. So domestic consumption, the fastest growing segments of the jobs in the Indian economy right now are sales, customer service, logistics and retail. And so the Model Shops and Establishments Act really sort of gives an opportunity to states to say that we want the farm to non-farm transition to accelerate. The most blue-collar, white-collar job in India today is retail, and we expect that to really increase retail employment in many ways. And the most important sort of theme which is being missed, I think, is women's labor force participation. You know, so women's labor force participation in India is only 23% of the labor of women, which is a little higher than Saudi Arabia. It's fallen from 30%, which was 10 years ago, and one of the primary reasons for that is women are withdrawing from agriculture, but formal non-farm service sector jobs haven't been created. So I think this Model Shops and Establishments Act is also an important thing for women's labor force participation.
Manish, hi, morning. Even if we were not to talk about this act in itself, but the anecdotal evidence, we've seen quite a bit of pickup in growth in jobs. That's reflected in some of the data that we were referring to yesterday as well. Whether it's Naukri.com, Monster. What's been the feedback from your end? Have you seen a distinct pickup in the overall scenario as well, overall job growth scenario as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from the date of the elections, I mean, I can take the long view or the short view, but if you take the 2-year view, our open positions are up 40% every, on a daily basis. If you took it 20, and the fastest growing segments, really, as I mentioned, are sales, customer service, and logistics. So it's domestic consumption. It's people building out their sales forces in next year towns. I mean, 3 years ago, we had employees in 2,000 cities and towns. Now we have them in 4,000 cities and towns, and it's really the long tail of sales, customer service for FMCG, for FMCD, for agrochemicals, for all kinds of domestic consumption, that's sales force requirement. And 65% of our people are in sales, customer service and logistics. Has really seen an uptick in the last 2 years, of course, but in the last sort of 3 months, it's getting much stronger.
Okay, just one final question then before we let you go. I understand that your margins were under pressure in the quarter gone by because you made a lot of investments in the staffing and recruitment business. But, even if you compare it to some of your peers like Quest Corp, your margins are much below the industry average. Would you be looking to get into any of the high margin businesses, like facility management, etc.? And what's the prognosis for your margins going ahead?
I mean, we've anticipated going to global margins over the next 3 to 5 years, as we mentioned during the IPO. I think our focus is domestic consumption. We will be doing some IT staffing. We don't do any IT staffing right now, and we've been looking at ways to sort of get into that space. But my sense is we can sustain our growth rate based on domestic consumption. Domestic consumption as you know, in all businesses in India is a lower margin business. Many of our competitors have half their business offshore, have most of their business is a bench model. We don't have a bench model at all. So while I agree there's a broad sort of category of business services which is going to grow. I mean, globally it's a $500 billion market cap business, and in India it's just getting started. But I think that domestic consumption-oriented business services will have different margins but much lower capital requirements. So while I think margins are important, I think as a company we do tend to focus on ROE and ROC. So while we can get into many of these higher margin businesses, they require a lot more capital. But we always evaluate, so we do expect margins to go up. But TeamLease as a company is focused on domestic consumption and domestic customers.
Okay, Manish, thanks a lot for your time today. So that's TeamLease. The stock is up about 5% right now. Well, let's revisit that Brexit story because the fears have abated.